from the worlds of the Genesis of Androzani Advent Calendar. The December Dump.
Alright, Callum. What is someone doing when they swear allegiance to Daenerys?
The death sentence.
They are jumping on the banned dragon.
Oh, that's a bad one. That one's bad. That's a really bad one.
Are they not all bad?
No, there are actually some that are okay. That one's really reaching.
Yeah, I think one of my favourite ones was the one about Joffrey. It's like, why do Lannisters... hang on. How do Lannisters sleep in their beds? It's like push two twins together and make a king. Anyway, hello and welcome to our next Game of Thrones reaction and review. We are doing Season 3, Episode 4, which is called And Now His Watch Is Ended. Patreon.com/Genesis of Androzani, where you can get the full-length reaction. We also have early access to this video, and we have you being able to request videos for us to do on there. We also have twitter.com/GAndrozani to get in contact with us. Letterboxd is a very good website, and you can find me on it if I found the link. You'll discover. Anyway, your thoughts going into this episode, Callum?
I'm not sure. I don't know what I'm expecting. I don't know what's going to be happening next. I roughly remember the last episode because it's been a little bit since we did the last one, so it's not as fresh in my mind as it normally has been so far in this series.
Well, at the end of the last episode,
Jaime
Lannister lost his hand.
Oh, that is true. He did lose his hand. Theon was saved. Daenerys bought some men for his army. It's offering up one of her dragons as well. So, there's a lot of stuff happening.
Stannis Baratheon wants the Red Woman because writing.
Yep. Because good character arcs. Yeah, that's it.
Yes, because, yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's what's happening. So, that's all we got to say?
Yeah, I guess so.
You just ready for anything?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for anything. I think that we haven't had a real impactful episode. Apart from probably the closest we got was the ending of last episode, because that was quite a stinger. But not an overall episode that's really overall wowed me.
Oh yeah, well, I would say the three we've had so far probably...
They've been good.
They've been good.
They've been solid.
But I would say in terms of what we've seen so far, they're probably three of the weaker episodes.
It's probably the weakest three in a row we've
But,
had.
however, having said that, there's a couple of small details in them that I really like. Especially with Jaime. I think he's been the MVP so far.
I would say so, considering how lacking he was. Not in terms of like greatness, but he wasn't in it a lot.
And also,
he missed out a lot.
Not necessarily the Riveron storyline, but Catelyn as a character has been great.
Yeah, she's been great. The actress has been phenomenal. Probably the best actress so far.
And then, of course, there is that one scene. There is that one scene in episode 1 we got with Tywin and Tyrion that I loved as well. Where he said he wouldn't want to give him Casterly Rock.
Yes.
But, yeah, that's all we got to say. So, shall we begin? And now his watch is ended.
Yeah, alright.
They say the only thing keeping that tree separate from the rest of the smoke is Maester Luwin's dead soul.
Are you afraid of the smoke?
But, having said that, he's in a much better place than Theon is at the moment. Or at least he was. Theon, you are lost, boy! Ugh.
Gross.
I'm eating right now.
He has to ride with his hand.
He's gonna get infections. Oh, I love that. Love that. That's a great bit of direction.
Oh, Lord Tyrion, come in, come in.
Hey.
I hope you might...
Hello, my old friend. It's been a long time.
I wonder how many people know that he owns that saucer in there.
Promise me! Promise me! Promise me! Promise me! Promise me!
Here's the same footage of him falling.
Yes.
The most extraordinary man they've ever had. And they've had a lot of
Oh my
We're talking about
god.
the same Padre. Quiet boy. What did he do to them?
I don't know, my lord.
What's left of her is buried in the crypts right down there.
Ceremony is
Ooh.
traditional name sanctum.
White flame, they called him. He thought drinking wildfire would turn him into a dragon. He was wrong.
Oh, that would be horrible,
There's
way
the
of
Mad
death.
King.
Oh no, it's quite all right, Your Grace. I'd love to see their tombs, really. It's like taking a walk through history.
The tomb's just up here.
This is so exciting.
You were married here, Your Grace?
So exciting.
Only yesterday.
And yet the world belongs to them.
A ridiculous arrangement in my mind.
The High Septon convinced him otherwise.
I'm glad he did.
The Slovene.
You led the defense of King's Landing. They adore you.
Led them so well.
She plays such a good female Littlefinger.
Yep.
Because remember last time they tried to attack him.
Yeah, the High Septon died.
It is. My real father lost his head at King's Landing.
I brought him back. He killed the others.
What? No, I didn't. You can't. Please stop.
It was all a trick.
All that just to fuck with him. Killed his own men just to fuck with him. You bastard.
You wanted to speak to me.
Yes, Archie.
You're still here.
Yes. Marjorie has her claws in Joffrey. She knows how to manipulate him.
Good. I wish you knew how to manipulate him. I don't distrust you. I will.
Look, little loves. A spider in the garden. Run along now. Grow strong.
To personally welcome you to King's Landing. The city has been made brighter by your presence.
The city is made brighter by my presence. Is that your usual line, Lord Varys? You here to seduce me? Seduce away. It's been so long. Though I rather think it's all for naught. What happens when the non-existent bumps against the decrepit? The spies came running to tell you. Why shouldn't I take an interest? She's an interesting girl.
Is she?
No, not particularly. She's had an interesting childhood.
Oh, if you'd be kind enough to give me your names, I'll ask the king to speak with you himself.
This would be at Highgarden, wouldn't it? We would be sisters, you and I. Would you like that?
Manipulating everyone she is.
Mm-hmm. It's so sad.
Where did he come from?
Down White Harbour way.
Didn't think a broke foot could kill a man.
It wasn't his foot. He's a bloody wildling's all he is.
Never knew Bannon could smell so good. You have won some, don't you, Moment? I had my 99th. I gotta feed my women!
So you admit you've got a hidden larder then? How else you make it through winter?
Enough! Out! I am a godly man!
You're a stingy bastard!
Bastard.
Oh no.
You are a bastard.
Oh no.
A daughter fucking wildling bastard.
Oh.
Oh, you'll get the same as he did. Unhand.
Jesus, Owen.
I shall have your head.
Oh, fuck. Oh. I thought he died. I guess their watch has ended.
Now his watch has ended.
Hey, gone. Yep, now his watch has ended. He's gone fucking crazy. Look at all those dragons.
Zaldrizes buzdaris kosdaur. Alirea munioengos nuihis isa. Dracaris.
And I killed just the men, not the women or the children either.
Kellen, your initial thoughts on "and now his watch is ended"?
That was a solid episode with an intense last 10 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, the last 10 minutes were wild, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the episode was really good.
Yeah. I would say probably the best we've had so far this season.
Yeah, I would say so.
Mm. But yeah, very solid, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I've got many things to say, but overall, I think it's a very solid episode.
Yeah.
Let's begin with Jaime Lannister.
He got the absolute shit kicked out of him in this episode. After the massive stinger of last episode, he's pretty much on death's bed, at least in his mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's lost his hand, and it's not obviously not being looked after.
No.
He's, fell off his horse into the mud. He was forced to drink piss.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not in a good way. He's at his lowest point now because he's lost his sword hand.
Yeah, this is definitely his lowest point.
Yeah. But I really like the way Brienne talks to him about it, basically saying, you lose the one thing you care about and you cry and you give up.
Yeah.
When, makes sense why she would say that, considering, she lost Renly Baratheon. So it makes sense why she would say that to him, considering that she didn't give up when she lost Renly.
Mm-hmm.
I like the detail of when she says, it's called Sapphire Isle because the water looks like a sapphire, it's blue, and he knew that. So he knew that there wasn't riches to give, but he was willing to save her from Locke anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously she asked him, saying, why'd you do that?
He doesn't answer.
Yeah. But it's very clear that Jaime is starting to do some very selfless acts.
Yeah. I think that he's sort of realizing how, I don't think he's realized how privileged he is. I think it's more that he realizes how dark he is now, in terms of like where he is. He's pretty much at the lowest he could possibly be.
Well, he's not asking himself, what am I without this? What am I without that sword?
Yeah, he right now he's pretty much like, he like in this episode he felt sorry for himself. He's like, oh, I'm dying, you know, and was called, you're acting like a woman by Brianeth. And yeah, it's interesting to see him go from the wise crack who always sort of had the last laugh and always was so manipulated there. So like,
well, I mean, he was the Kingslayer. He killed
exactly.
Aerys Targaryen, and now look at him.
Now he's literally covered in mud.
He's just some guy missing it. He's some guy missing a hand on the King's Road, about to be handed over to a house that he barely even knows.
Pretty much. And yeah, he's pretty much at his lowest right now.
Yep. Yeah, and Locke's kicking the shit out of him, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
And, yeah, he's basically just gonna... You would imagine, considering he's a Bolton soldier, he's probably gonna travel to Harrenhal and hand him over to Roose Bolton. For his big reward. But, yeah, that we got an aftermath to Jaime's hand being cut off, basically. That's what we got this episode.
Yes, we did.
Shall we move on? Tyrion Lannister, he got very little screen time, but he did get that one scene where Varys told him about the story of how his genitals were cut. They're obviously tied into Blackwater.
Yes, they did.
And we found out how Varys' genitals were cut. It was very gruesome. That he was given a potion where he was basically put into sleep paralysis.
Oh yeah, he was basically...
And then
at that point, he's pretty much disabled. He can't move, he can't do anything. But he's fully conscious.
Yes, of course, Tyrion in that scene is seeking Varys for revenge against whoever tried to kill him on the battlefield. And then, of course, we find out that Varys has some revenge of his own, as he is keeping his sorcerer locked away. The one that cut him off.
Yeah.
I really like that scene. I will say, I do feel like maybe that scene could have taken place a bit earlier in the season. It did feel a little bit like...
Already, I think so.
In terms of time-wise, it was maybe a little bit late. But I'm glad it happened.
This episode, in terms of, I think all before that happened within the last 10 minutes, it very much felt like this was a Varys episode.
Yeah, there was a lot of Varys.
I feel like this is the most within one episode we've ever got of Varys.
Well, yeah, he got a scene with Olenna Tyrell. He also got a scene with Tyrion, and then he also got another scene with... He got a third one, didn't he? I believe? I can't remember. Oh, yeah, he got one with Roz as well.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
So I feel that this episode really, re-established Varys, because I think he hasn't been as prominent since, I think, season 1.
Oh, I mean, season 2 he was there, but like obviously because Littlefinger wasn't there wasn't much competition. But what he was doing behind the scenes was really, like, for example, when he got Roz on his side. I think part of the issue is that there's not really much Varys can do in the Battle of Blackwater, because obviously he's not a soldier, so it actually exposed a weakness. But I think where in season 2 he had his biggest strengths was near the beginning. I believe it was What Is Dead May Never Die was the episode, where Tyrion was obviously investigating Littlefinger, Pycelle, and Varys, and obviously Varys is the one that came off better than the other two. Then he obviously had... And the thing is, Varys, behind the scenes, was starting to manipulate people around Tyrion, like Shay, for example. So a lot of what he was doing in Season 2 is very off-screen.
For sure.
But of course, with Littlefinger out of the picture, Varys very much... You know, he's... he didn't have much competition like he did in Season 1.
No. No, for sure. But I enjoyed all the scenes of Varys. I thought it's definitely made me realise how much I miss him on screen.
Yeah.
Just as a presence.
Oh, he's great. He's fantastic.
Yeah, I always enjoy his scenes.
I really like the detail of how the one thing that Roz noticed that he didn't was the 2 feather beds. That makes sense considering her profession.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, because of that, Varys is now knows what Littlefinger's up to. He wants to smuggle Sansa out of King's Landing and go to the Vale, or go to the Eyrie.
Yes.
So I don't know if Littlefinger revealed this in another episode, but I'm not sure if you know it yet. But do you remember back in season 1? It was the episode where Ned got captured. It was You Win or You Die. Before Ned was captured, Littlefinger had a scene in his brothel with his whores.
Yeah.
And he was saying to them, the whores, I think Roz was even there, and she said, "Oh, why don't you join us, Lord Baelish?" And he said to them, "I'm saving myself for another." And at first you would think it was Catelyn, but then he described her as not very beautiful. So all the way back in season 1, episode 7, he was planning to go to the Eyrie to marry Lysa Arryn. So this was before Ned was captured.
Yes.
However, Littlefinger, obviously, as we knew, he said, "I'm not going to fight them, I'm going to fuck them." He knew he was going to capture them. He was going to capture Ned, or he was going to try and divert him away from power. But yes, in that scene, that's what he was alluding to. He was talking about Lysa Arryn. And now Varys, this far into the game, all the way from then to now, finally, Varys knows what Littlefinger's up to. He's going to the Eyrie to marry Lysa Arryn, and he's going to take Sansa with him. This is all obviously going to be a big power move for him, because once he gets control of the Eyrie, he will now have control of the army, which is the Knights of the Vale, which is one of the strongest armies in the world. And now that Varys is aware of this, he's going to obviously take note of that.
He will, yes.
I love that line where Varys says, "I don't hate him, I admire him. I enjoy him."
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, it's just that Littlefinger would see the whole world burn to the ground if he would be the King of the Ashes.
Yes.
And that all ties back to those scenes where we saw him looking at the throne, and then Varys would walk in. "Oh, you're going to talk about my gash?" But yeah, like you said, I think Varys was great in this episode. I thought he was one of the highlights.
I agree. I thought he was one of the highlights.
Yes. So, shall we move on to the next section?
Sure.
Right. One of the biggest storylines from this episode was at Craster's Keep. With a whole bunch of characters. We obviously had, the usuals like Gren, Edison, Rast, Gilly, Samwell, Othel, Craster, Jill Mormont, and Carl Tanner. So the first part of that is we see a growing resentment towards Craster and Mormont, obviously leading off, when Mormont forced Rast to, protect Sam on the road.
Yeah.
And the first part of that is obviously, Sam finds Gilly again, and she gives him the thimble. And then she says, "I don't care about your stupid thimble, I want to save my baby." And obviously Sam's a bit lost because he doesn't really know what to do. Because obviously, Craster's there, and if he takes her away, he might be killed. But then, of course, at dinner, well, in quote-unquote dinner, more like the Night's Watch Craster eat. Carl Tanner, played by Bern Gorman, who plays Owen in Torchwood, calls him a daughter-fucking wildling bastard.
"You daughter-fucking wildling bastard."
And then Carl Tanner kills Craster, and Rast kills Commander Jill Mormont. And now his watch is ended.
And now his watch is ended.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get that the title is related to that?
Of course, it came after them having a funeral for one of the Night's Watch members, but they didn't realize that they were about to die as well.
Double meaning.
Yes.
Subverted my expectations.
What did you expect going into this episode hearing that title?
I definitely think it would be something to do with the Night's Watch.
Mm-hmm.
Something to do with them. I did think tensions eventually would boil over.
Yes.
And I don't think I thought it was going to be as intense as that.
Yeah, because now Mormont's dead.
Mormont is dead.
Yeah.
I didn't expect the other men of the Night's Watch to go fucking crazy and insane.
Yeah.
But I think in a way I think it does make sense that they're going insane because they're hungry, they're extremely desperate, they've been out beyond the wall for a long time now.
Mm-hmm. And also Carl Tanner made it very clear he wants Crest as daughters as well.
Yeah, and I think having to hear someone just like, "Oh, why don't you slit their throats and be done with it?" I imagine they're just sick and tired of it, that they literally go insane and want them dead.
But now that they're out without their leader, there's now chaos ensues because they don't have Mormont.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sam's now run away. He's now alone with a woman and a child.
Yep. He's now found a way to have Gilly and her baby escape.
Yeah. Just what's gonna happen? Are they gonna run into a White Walker, and then who's gonna take the baby? Maybe. Are they gonna be found by the insane former men of the Night's Watch? Maybe. I don't know. Will they just die in the snow? Maybe. I don't know.
A lot could happen now.
A lot could happen.
Yeah. And now Carl Tanner and Rast have basically got ownership of Crastus Keep and all of his daughters and all of his food.
Yes.
But what happens, say, if a White Walker came to claim a son?
Well, they wouldn't find the son and would then go and probably kill everybody, because I think that's the arrangement that was made, if I were to make a guess.
Mm.
I think something bad is a coming.
You know what was one thing I was thinking when I saw Mormont's death scene? Because I've obviously seen it before and I knew it was coming, so it wasn't a shock or anything. It's weird how Hot Pie's leaving the group got more emotional music than George Mormont's death.
Yeah. That is very strange. And also his death was really weird, because at first I thought the initial stabbing killed him, but then he started to strangle.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember his name, but he then was coughing up blood and then died. And I was like, that was a bit... I would rather he just have died from the initial stab.
I mean, he is a big bear, and he's obviously going to try and fight back, But then, of course,
true. But I think in terms of how just in terms of how you want to display the story, I think it would have just been better to just that be the impactful moment. I think. Because it's coming from behind, he's like, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, he didn't know he was about to get stabbed in the back. I think having him just die there, I think it'd be more shocking. I think it'd work better in terms of how the scene was structured. I think what he did was a bit. It felt odd in terms of how was it structured.
All right then. But yes, that's pretty much all there is, apart from Edison saying that the dead flesh smells good.
Oh no, he smelled so good.
Yes.
Maybe that's a hint, he'll become a fucking cannibal.
Yes. We got a very brief scene with Bran, who had a vision of the three-eyed raven, and he climbed a tree, and then of course his mother, Catelyn, pushed him out of the tree.
And he fell, just like he did in episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
It was the same shot, I'm assuming, yeah, just replacing the footage of him falling and putting it here.
Yeah, I think so.
I like that. I kind of liked that detail.
Indeed. But that was
Yeah,
what
it
we
was
really
very brief.
that's all we really got, because he woke up and then Jojen said something to him and then that was it.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. I think it's I think it was a good scene.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's establishing that he's continuing this journey, and I think he's facing obstacles.
Of course.
Yeah, I think a nice, just little brief scene. I think it was good.
Yes.
Good scene.
Well, back to King's Landing, we have Joffrey Baratheon, and in this episode, the main article for him, we were properly introduced to the Sept of Baelor, which was that church they were in, that massive church. And
Yes.
the one bit of detail about the Sept of Baelor is this is where Ned Stark was beheaded, but the problem is, like, in season 1 they didn't have the budget to show the massive church, so they just had like a very small like statue, and that was it. Like, there was no Baelor behind him. So it's kind of a CGI plot hole that Ned didn't have the Sept of Baelor behind him, even though the bloody statue's there. But this time around they actually got to show you the whole thing.
Maybe they just built it really, really quickly.
No, because they planned to CGI that entire building in the background during his beheading scene. They just didn't have the money for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what did you think of the Sept of Baelor? I thought it was cool, and I liked how the way they introduced it was they had Joffrey like introducing Marjorie to all the dead Targaryens.
Yeah, because that's what he gets off on at this point.
Yeah, and I love Marjorie, how in this episode, again, she's showing how manipulative she can be, not only of Joffrey, but also of Sansa as well.
Mm.
And I like how that links into the scene with Tywin and how he says to Cersei, I wish you could manipulate him the way that she does.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what did you think of Joffrey, Marjorie, all that?
I actually liked it. I like the sort of like Joffrey is not used to being adored by the people he rules over, and he's also like he looked uncomfortable at first, which I liked because he's so like he doesn't care about the people who rules over as long as he is ruling.
I mean, they also, like last season, they tried to kill him.
Yeah, exactly. I think the sort of like, I think Marjorie's had a big hand in like this turn of Joffrey. He's not going to turn as like a person. He's still going to be a complete bastard as a person. But I like this sort of like direction he's going, as like him actually being adored and him being like really weird with it. And I really like this sort of like story between Joffrey and Marjorie, because it's so obvious that Marjorie is way smarter than she's acting in front of Joffrey.
I love the bit where she says, "Oh, they've heard about your heroic actions in the Battle of Blackwater."
Yeah. It's like, God, I do really enjoy this story with Joffrey, of him just, he's an absolute coward, yet is being fed all this bullshit. Oh, you were so brave, you led the battle, you won against Stannis Baratheon. No, it's entertaining to watch the subtle details of the expressions he makes during these kind of scenes. I look forward to seeing more, to be honest.
Yes. Then of course there was the scene where Marjorie was having that conversation with Sansa, and now obviously she saw her praying, so she used an example of a prayer, where she prayed to see some girl sick, and obviously it didn't happen, which is interesting detail, because this links to Catelyn and how she in the second episode about how she prayed for Jon Snow's death.
And then prayed for him to live, and her.
And that then, if you were to look at this from a religious perspective, and within Westeros, those just based off those grounds in isolation, I would say that gives the old gods more validity than the Seven, because it shows that something that Catelyn prayed for actually did happen, whereas something that Marjorie prayed for didn't.
Yeah.
It's an interesting detail. Oh, of course, that then links into the fact that that links into the whole Brothers Without Banners scene later on, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Marjorie, obviously she's trying to make Sansa her best friend, so that she can get Sansa in her family.
I want us to be sisters.
And what I love about that is that I think it's clear that Marjorie is aware that Littlefinger wants to take her to the Vale. So what she's doing is she's like, if you come on my side, if you don't follow Littlefinger's orders and you marry my brother, you'll come to Highgarden with the Tyrells and you'll be in our power. And what I love about this is that Sansa feels like Marjorie, or the Tyrells and Littlefinger are both giving her like options to escape Cersei, but the fact of the matter is both sides want to keep her and use her the same way Cersei is doing.
Yeah, and she doesn't realise it. Because she's like an innocent fool in that regard.
Yeah,
she's very childlike, naive.
Yeah, so you just gotta realize at some point like what's gonna happen when Sansa sort of it clicks in her brain that all these people just want to use her.
Yeah, like she's kind of been used since the end of season 1 till now.
Yeah, like the thing is, like the Tyrells will probably do the least harm to her, but they're still gonna use her.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, I thought that scene was really good. I just know you can just see Marjorie has a way with people. She knows what will make them tick.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, she convinced a gay man to marry her.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of power.
Yeah, she has a good way of words to be able to.
I want to make Renly's perversion punishable by death. We got 2 scenes with Cersei. The first one was with Olenna, Joffrey, Marjorie, and the Sept of Baelor, and then the second one was with her father, Tywin Lannister. And I thought that scene with Tywin was really good. I loved that. It was great how she just sort of came to him and said, Jaime and Tyrion aren't giving you what you want. Maybe I'm the one that will honor your legacy. And then I love how Tywin responds to her and says, I don't distrust you because you're a woman. I distrust you because you're not as smart as you think you are. Which shows that Tywin is not, unlike a lot of people in Westeros, Tywin is not a sexist. He's actually respects competence, which was what we saw in Harrenhal with Arya.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how it's, that I think that's a big blow to Cersei because she's very confident that she can manipulate people. But as we've seen, she doesn't quite have as much manipulation power as someone like Varys or Littlefinger or Marjorie has. She's just a few steps behind. And as we saw, she's trying to control the situation, like in the Sept of Baelor, for example, or at the dinner table a few episodes ago. And it's very clear that Marjorie has way more control over Joffrey than Cersei does. And that's annoying her. But then, of course, I love the fact that Cersei says to him, she says to Tywin, well, why don't you try and do it? Why don't you try and control Joffrey? And then Tywin looks at her and says, I will.
It's a great line and a great look.
Yeah. And I like how a lot of the scenes we're getting with Tywin throughout the season, we're seeing him writing letters to people. So it's very clear that he's quite busy as Hand of the King. And also in that scene, it's tackled why are you putting all your effort into getting Jaime back? And then, Tywin says, I went to war with Robb Stark to get Tyrion back. And if I was going to do that for that little stump, then what do you think I'm going to do for my true heir?
Yeah.
I thought that,
He's a very brutally honest man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one of the reasons why I love Tywin and one of the reasons why I love Charles Dance as an actor is that no matter what the intensity is of the scene, his presence is always felt, even if it's a scene like that. Even if it's not a scene full of energy, he's always on point every time, no matter what the scene is. His range with that character in every scene he's in is brilliant. I honestly think, when you think about every single Tywin scene we've seen since season 1, I can't think of one flaw with any of it. Every single thing he does, every action, every word, everything he does, I can't think of one criticism of Tywin. Like, he is, in my mind, he is a flawlessly written and acted character. Everything about him just screams perfection in terms of executing a character for me. And, it's not because, he has to, do the wow factor. He's not, the kind of character that's going to be like, oh, we need to have this character, have OMG moments. We need to have him, surprise the audience. He's just an extremely competently and brilliantly portrayed character that plays the role exactly right, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I love how his position as the richest man in the world is that he owns the world and he owns everyone in it. And I like the scene how when Cersei is questioning him about controlling Joffrey, it's her basically saying to him, you may be able to control everyone else in the world, but can you control the king?
Yeah.
And Tywin seems very confident that he can. But you've got to ask yourself the question, can Tywin Lannister control Joffrey?
I look forward to seeing his attempts.
Yes, and say for example, what if Tywin can't control Joffrey? Does that mean that the Tyrells have more power over the king than he does?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You got to ask yourself all those questions. But yes, Tywin is brilliant. The other character we got in King's Landing was Olenna Tyrell, who again, she's a very, very, very blunt, funny character. I love how she hates the fact that her own house has a flower and it says, be strong on it, or stay stronger? Can't remember what it was. And she's just I just love the fact that she's just our fucking house sigil is pathetic. It's just so brutally honest. But my favorite thing is that when Varys tries to come in and ass kiss her, she can see right through it. She's like, oh, your beauty is welcomed. And then she's like, oh, are you trying to seduce me, Lord Varys? What happens when the non-existent bumps up against the decrepit? That's brilliant. Of course, Varys is now sort of working with Olenna in an effort to sort of arm against Littlefinger, because obviously Varys at this point now knows what Littlefinger's got planned. So, yeah. But yeah, what did you think of Olenna?
I thought she was good. I don't really have anything else to say really. I thought it was just decent.
I just really like that actress. She's very funny.
I agree.
She's very funny.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, she is for sure.
I love that line where she says she's a very interesting girl, and then Varys says, is she? And she's like, oh, not really, but she's had an interesting childhood.
Yes, sadly.
Yes. Shall we move on to the next section?
Yes.
Okay, well, another one of my favourite parts of this episode was Theon Greyjoy, who...
He had a really, really good individual scene.
Mm-hmm.
He did really.
Reflecting on everything.
Because it was all about him.
I thought Alfie Allen's acting was superb.
I agree.
And obviously, in the moment, he's being taken to what he thought was Deepwood Mott to see Yara. Obviously, for her to bring him back. And then, of course, it's revealed that he was just taken in a circle back to the Dreadfort.
Yeah. I think that scene was... After his speech, I think after that, it was sort of becoming clear that it was a trap.
Yes, and now that we know this, I can now talk about the last 3 episodes without shutting my mouth. Because, oh my god, I love Ramsay Snow. The fact that he put on this facade that he was an Iron Islander, and he tricked his own men into chasing Theon killed them just to mess with him.
Yeah.
That's why when they were when he shot the arrow into his soldier in the forest, that's why he said, "You bastard."
Yeah. I think I know about Ramsay Snow a little bit, because I think it's quite hard to avoid quite a major character. So I knew that he wasn't sort of who he says he was. Maybe he could have been on with the Greyjoy, but I think this like sort of way it was structured was actually quite well put together. Now I didn't really think of like the "you bastard" line as like you fucking prick.
Yeah. He had his own men killed just to mess with Theon.
Yeah. And it's not like the sort of, at least I don't feel, it didn't really seem like the sort of classic, like, oh, I'm just crazy, so I'm just going to kill my own men for no reason, like, because they looked at me funny or something. He was actually trying to fuck with Theon. So.
Yeah, of course, Ramsay is Roose Bolton's bastard, as you may have gathered. So he was the one that was sent to capture Theon from Winterfell in season 2. And of course, the Boltons being the sigil of the flayed man, Ramsay loves to torture. But I love the fact that it's not just a straightforward thing of, oh, Theon's in a prison and he's being like tortured physically. He's being tortured mentally as well. And I like the fact that Ramsay listens to everything Theon's saying and acts like he cares. Like, this whole facade he puts on, like, it actually sounds like he's caring, but it's just because he's pretending to. And that makes those scenes in the last 3 episodes very rewatchable for me, because with perspective of who he is, I can see through his bullshit. I can see that he's not being genuine. And, like, the way he's speaking, it's, like, a little bit off. Like, his information is a little bit dry, and it's like, it's like, oh, the way he's telling these stories. And I love the way that they use the music to like uplift his spirit. Like they bring in the sort of Ironborn theme from season 2 when he opens the door. He's like, your sister will be waiting in here, like, as in, like, you know, this is finally your time to escape from hell. But then of course once he lights the torch and he sees the cross, then the music drops again.
Yeah.
And then when Theon is then tied to the post, you can see Ramsay smiling. Yeah, he just loves it. Yeah, so I just think, I think this whole 3 episode sort of arc was a great introduction for Ramsay, I think. And now we'll have to see from here what happens now that Theon is aware that Ramsay tricked him. But yeah, have you got anything else to add on top of that?
No, I just enjoyed the acting of Theon, and I look forward to seeing more of his character.
I loved the way that when he was saying that whole scene when he was sitting down, talking about, you know, what was the word he said? Oh yeah, my real father died in King's Landing and his head was chopped off.
That was a good line.
Yeah,
that was a good line.
I love how in that whole scene, the way it's shot, he's behind bars.
Yeah, the sort of direction in that scene was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like the sort of like dampness and the sort of like dark depression like sort of feeling to it. It really suited like the tone, and the tone was very well implemented, and the writing for it was really good. And then you've got the acting, which was really good. It all blended together to make a very, very, very good scene.
Yes. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
So, finally, after all this time, since a golden crown was when this whole storyline started, after the joust in The Wolf and the Lion, the Mountain obviously went to the Riverlands under command of Tywin Lannister. and obviously to deal with the Brothers Without Banners. Obviously, Thoros of Myr and Angai being two of them, and then in that period of time, Robert Baratheon was out hunting, so Ned Stark was Hand of the King, and he was on the throne controlling the law in his place. And obviously, Ned sentenced Tywin to, seize all his lands and titles for it. But one thing that happened in that scene was he sent one of the soldiers in King's Landing, Beric Dondarrion, to go and deal with the Mountain in the Riverlands. And we never saw him since until this episode. Obviously, he's been recast because now he's an actual character, so they've cast a proper actor in his place. I mean, I say a proper actor, all due respect to whoever played him, in that one shot in a Golden Crown. But he finally has dialogue, so now they've recast him as Richard Dormer. He now has an eye patch, and he has scars around his neck, and he worships the Lord of Light. Just like Thoros of Myr, just like the Red Woman. And he has now sentenced the Hound to a trial by combat.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like how that was set up in Season 1, and now we get an actual follow-up to it. And also the fact that throughout the entire of Season 2 at Harrenhal, they were trying to find the Brothers Without Banners, and now we know where they are. So yeah, what is your overall thoughts on the reintroduction of Beric Dondarrion, and now you introduced the full sort of set of the Brothers Without Banners?
I think individual characters are pretty interesting. I think there's potential there. I think the introduction, I was a bit not confused, but I was like wondering what the purpose of the scene was, and I was like, oh, okay, it's sort of like a court in a way, and they've set them to trial by combat. And I liked the input of Arya in that scene. I think
yes, and that links back to Season 1, Episode 2, yeah.
Yeah, Episode 2, all the way back then when the Hound killed the Butcher's Boy. I think it's nice sort of like a way to call back for Arya's character.
And how just him following the command of Robert Baratheon, which was law at the time, still is, was why he killed the Butcher's Boy. And I like the fact that the Brothers Without Banners, because they're independent, they have their own set of laws. They have different laws to the actual kingdom itself, and their laws have very different moral value. They're more based on following the Lord of Light, so they're very much a religious group, and they basically said, you murdered an innocent boy, even though he was commanded to by his prince and his king. And I think it's no mistake that the Butcher's Boy had red hair, considering that the Lord of Light is the Lord of Fire. It's very much it's the red god. So I think it's very well placed that the Butcher's Boy had red hair. It's just like how you said it's no mistake that Lomi Greenlands was blonde. So yeah, I think that was really good linking, and it's just cool to finally see Beric. I've been waiting a while for this, to see Beric Dondarrion finally reintroduced into the story, because it's just one of those long-term storylines that's been building since the start of Season 1, and it's finally all sort of been unfolded, because the Brothers Without Banner storyline has all been happening off screen. We were meant to see it in Season 1, but they didn't film it. They didn't film the scene where the Mountain went to the Riverlands. But basically, this entire storyline has been happening off screen, and now we finally got to it. And now the Hound is going to be in a trial by combat with Beric Dondarrion.
I don't imagine that's going to go well for him. I expect the Hound to win, if I'm honest, because just both pure size and strength.
You do have to put in perspective, though, that Beric has gone to the Riverlands where the Mountain was, so you would have to think maybe he has fought the Mountain at some point.
Possibly.
And have you noticed that he has lost an eye? And he has scars around his neck, which doesn't bode well. So yeah, we'll have to. But you can see that with him obviously believing in the Lord of Light, he has very much confidence in this trial by combat against the Hound. So you got to imagine that he has a lot of faith to be able to do that with confidence, because the Hound is obviously a very strong swordsman. Right then. The only other thing we got was Gendry saying that he'll have a sip of the alcohol.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. Also, put in perspective, the Brothers Without Banners now own not only one of the members of the Kingsguard, who actually, well, he was a member of the Kingsguard, but they also own Robert Baratheon's bastard and Ned Stark's daughter.
Yeah, they've got a lot
That's
of...
quite a capture. That's quite a capture.
They've got quite a lot of big characters in terms of importance within the world.
Absolutely.
That we know.
Yes.
Because Gendry still doesn't know, like, why he's so important.
Alright then, shall we move on to the final section?
Yes.
Right then, in Astapor, Daenerys Targaryen has now got an unsullied army and her dragon back.
She finally has an army.
Mm-hmm.
It's taken her over a season and a half to finally start moving forward with her story.
Now, one of the things I love about this storyline is the fact that they've used subtitles to their advantage, in the sense that throughout the whole thing, Missandei has been a translator for Krasner's, and he's been saying things about her that Missandei had to translate into different words. But then,
I like that sort of aspect of the subtitles, that you get a bit more context.
Yes,
you know?
but
I like that.
but then of course it's revealed that Daenerys knew the whole time what he was saying.
She knew the whole time.
Because obviously her mother was the blood of Valyria, so she can speak their language.
Yeah.
And yeah, she burned Krasner's with Drogon, and all the Unsullied killed the Masters. And
yes.
she...
the one who owned slaves.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and she also threw down the whip and declared that the Unsullied are free men.
Mm-hmm. And they agreed.
Yes. Now, I have a few things to say about this scene. Firstly, the positive. It's very badass. It's a very big scene for her character. In fact, it's probably
I agree.
in the TV show. It's probably Daenerys' most iconic scene. It's probably that one.
It seems that way. I think in the way it's like structured, I think wouldn't be surprised if that's one of her most memorable moments in the show.
You always, whenever you look up Daenerys, it's that scene. It's also the scene where her dragons are born in season 1.
Yeah, I think I've seen at least sort of stuff similar to that whenever I see photos of Game of Thrones, and specifically Daenerys.
Yes.
Yeah, I think in terms of the visuals, it was very, very cool.
Absolutely.
In terms of visuals.
Yes. However, there is one aspect of this that is missing for me. And part of it comes from not only the difference in not being able to get a character's inner monologue and point of view, but it also comes from how they changed the Karth storyline in Season 2. Because this scene in the books, in terms of events, happens exactly the same way as it does in the show. But the difference between the two is, firstly, what makes this scene so powerful in the books is the fact that Karth was a failure. The fact that she couldn't get what she needed, what she wanted.
Right.
The fact that she went to the House of the Undying, discovered things about herself and had to leave. The fact that Zaro had to say, you have to leave Karth, otherwise you'll be in danger. The fact that she couldn't get an army, the fact that she couldn't get the ships she wanted, the fact that she was left with what she had at the start of the book, she had exactly the same by the end, but the only thing she'd gained was more perspective on how dour her situation was. So something like this, of her getting an army, is the first time she's actually finally had her plans kick into gear. And a lot of the reason for her getting this way comes from that perspective she got in Karth. Whereas here, in the TV show, Karth was not a failure at all. So there isn't that aspect to it. The other part of it that's missing is the moral ambiguity. Because Daenerys went ahead and just murdered a whole bunch of people. Now, to be fair,
She did.
they were masters and they owned slaves. However, some of them were doing so because they were following the law. So there were some people that she murdered that were innocent. And this is why this element is missing, because her doing this in the books has a double-edged sword to it. Because in the bigger picture, she is claiming an army with the effort to overthrow slavers, to free, the common people, the people that are being abused. But at the same time, in doing so, she's doing so by murder, by force. But the thing is, the problem is the TV show doesn't portray this at all. The TV show portrays this as everything she is doing is right. So what you get is a scene where that is the way it's directed, the way it's written, and the way it's presented is designed for an audience to cheer and to love her for it.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's completely missing all of that moral ambiguity that was intended, which makes her character far less interesting, I think. Because what that makes Daenerys now is that makes her a strong black and white character, but not an interesting character for me. Because all I can say about her is that she's very strong and she's badass, but I can't say anything other than that. Because there is no moral ambiguity around what she's doing. And there's no perspective from the House of the Undying because she barely had any visions in there. And there's no failure that she had to overcome because she didn't lose in Karth. So I think there is that element missing from that scene. And this scene is the first example in this show of the showrunners deciding to change the way the show is written to catering to an audience that will cheer for people that they love, rather than creating a scenario with moral ambiguity. And there is many, many, many more examples of this to come, where they will strip away any subtext or inner monologue or moral ambiguity that was presented in the source material to have an audience cheer, to create, as you would understand it, baby faces and heels. Because what it's doing is it's now making the slavers and the masters in the Slavers' Bay 100% evil, and it's making Daenerys the savior.
Yeah.
As opposed to the much more interesting political scenario that the book presents, of Daenerys is trying to save the world, but is doing so by force. So what I think we should have seen in a scene like that, if we're not going to get an inner monologue, because the one part for me that really didn't click was when Jorah Mormont and Barristan looked at each other and smiled. Because I feel like there's something missing in the sense that I feel like there should be a character that is questioning this, that is saying, looking at, like, for example, it would show a shot of, people dying, people being killed, possibly people that may be innocent, and you would think maybe, someone would question it. Someone would think, well, you're actually killing people. You could have imprisoned them. You could have stripped them of their power. You could have just, you could have cut them away. You could have cut them away from their riches, but you had to kill them. But these questions don't get asked because it's not presented that way. So we now have no reason to question a story or question, the actions of a character, because they're being presented as the ultimate good and power. And this, for me, weirdly enough, considering this is probably one of Daenerys' best scenes, that one small detail that's missing from it is part of what makes her character fall down for me. So,
but Connor, it's a a badass woman doing something badass.
So it's interesting how,
So it's good.
rather than telling a scene where a character's actions has a double-edged sword, we now tell a story
It's
where
presented that she is doing the right thing.
we now have a scenario where my feelings on the scene are as a double-edged sword. So yeah.
It's like poetry or rhymes.
Yes. So that's what I've got to say about that scene. There are small details with some of these characters that the showrunners are missing.
Oh, for sure. I think, and that always is going to happen with. I'm not saying that it's an excuse, but that's always going to happen with book to
Not necessarily.
either film or TV.
Not necessarily though, because there are many occasions, like in season 1, for example, where this wasn't the case.
Yeah, I mean, as like a overall show, like I guess within a contained season, yeah, you could definitely do it. Well, I think in terms of just the whole show or a whole series, you could, like for example, Harry Potter, it's completely like there's a lot of things different. I think for an entire run of like a show like this, it's not always going to be accurate. But I'm not saying that's an excuse. But that's just sometimes writers do that.
Yes, but in doing so,
I completely understand.
In not finding an alternative way to portray this ambiguity, it makes the character less interesting to me. That's the problem I have.
I agree with you saying. I understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way the scene is presented. It's like a big moment for her character, but it comes across. Well, no, I don't think it's like subtle about it. She's like presented as doing the ultra thing, the savior of these people by killing the bad men.
It's unfortunate because the success of this scene leads down the road to many other scenes where the showrunners try to do the exact same thing with other characters. And it gets worse, folks. It gets much worse. Because at least this made sense. At least this made sense.
Yeah, it made sense for sure.
And it may have made Daenerys a little bit less interesting, but it doesn't ruin her story yet.
Do you think this is the scene where many mothers thought, I'm going to name my kid after her?
Yes.
And then
I think it is.
later regretted that decision because Daenerys is a fucking psychopath.
She's not a 13-year-old girl trying to discover herself and her place in the world, who is
she's a powerful woman.
Someone who is making a lot of mistakes and using her power to murder people but not realizing the damage it's doing. She's just a very, very, very powerful woman that everyone loves. Where have I heard that before?
I don't know what you're on about. I don't understand that reference.
That being said, the actors did great and the way it was shot was amazing.
Yeah, in terms of performance and direction, it was fantastic. I would say it's a real spectacle.
Emilia Clarke is very good with the foreign language scenes.
She actually really is.
Especially considering
best scene in terms of acting
so far. Yeah, especially considering between seasons 1 and 2, she had brain aneurysm and she had to relearn the languages. I think another scene where she had really good acting was in You Win or You Die, when she's almost poisoned by the wine cellar. That was very good.
That was good. I remember that.
Do as he says. You will drink. Yes, so anyway.
Where are my dragons?
Oh, God. Are there any other characters you want to talk about? Or any other...
What's on the top of my head?
Or anything to do with the plot?
Thought the plot overall for each story was good. And I think the last 10 minutes were very entertaining.
Right then, this episode received critical acclaim and consistently rated as the best of the season at the time of its airing. Rotten Tomatoes critical consensus reads, and now as Watch has ended is an enthralling meditation on a betrayal and revenge, bolstered by a mind-blowing surprise for those who would underestimate Daenerys Targaryen. Matt Fowler rated it high, highlighting shocking deaths, brutal double crosses, and a Kingslayer undone, made for some mighty fine thrones. David Sims considered it an insanely satisfying, shocking episode. Vanderwerf agreed. The final scene with Daenerys was unanimously praised. Miles McNutt found that the scene was one of the series' best sequences and considered it an impressive feat to have achieved a climax so satisfying for the viewer with only a relatively small number of scenes building up to it in the first 3 episodes. Vanderwerf felt that Emilia Clarke's performance was Emmy-worthy. Alan Sepinwall also praised her performance, remarking that her big moment comes in a fictional foreign language and subtitles are barely necessary. That's how good she is. So big praise all round for this one.
Yeah. I can see definitely how a casual audience would absolutely adore Daenerys.
Yes,
Because
I did. I did the first time I watched it. The first time I watched it, the first time I watched this show, I loved that scene. Loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think it's a really good scene anyway. I still think it's a good scene, to be honest.
Oh yeah, sure. For sure. It definitely fits like the sort of like nowadays when people long for strong female characters. I can definitely understand a casual audience being so adoring her as a character because she's strong and female, as they say. But yeah, in terms of the scene, it is a visually and like very well acted scene that definitely catches your attention.
Absolutely, it's memorable. It's iconic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Definitely seems that way.
Of course, this episode was written by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss.
It was.
And like I said, I think for the most part they did a very solid job.
It was solid. Definitely the best of the season.
Yeah,
Very
I'd say
solid.
so. I'd say so. And it was directed by Alex Graves, which was another element that I thought was spectacular in this episode, was the direction. Mainly in the Astapor scene, I think. It was brilliant.
I agree.
Yeah. And I also think you can tell that beyond the wall it's getting colder. Like they're really amping up the wintry aspects of it.
Definitely, for sure.
Oh,
It's
and also
becoming more dangerous.
there was one other one I forgot to mention. The Sept of Baelor. The direction in that was amazing.
It was.
It
The
re-
direction overall of this episode was great.
Yeah, it really did make the Sept of Baelor feel big.
Yeah. It's probably the best directed episode of the season so far.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then of course the scene in the Dreadfort when Ramsay lights the torch.
Mm-hmm.
Again, brilliant. That was
Like,
brilliant. The reveal.
Last episode's direction was good, but then when you have an actual, like, proper director do an episode, you can like see the difference in terms of like ability and quality.
Because last time it was D&D.
Well, yeah, it was. I think it was just David Benioff, but he was.
Well, no, he was the only one that was credited, but both of them directed it.
All right. Okay. Well, yeah. In terms of just direction, it was good and solid. There were good stuff, but this true steps on it for sure because I think it was just so.
Yeah.
If you like visuals and stories, you're gonna like this kind of stuff.
Oh, and also one transition I really liked was transitioning from Jaime looking into a fire, and then it goes to candles and Cersei's behind them.
I noticed that. That was really good.
Yeah, that was brilliant. And also there was a lot of shots that had like bars or grates against them, like with Varys opening the little box with the saucer in it. Then you've also got Joffrey looking into the crypts with his bars in front of his face. And then, of course, you got Theon where the bars are in front of his face as well in the Dreadfort.
Good stuff.
Very good stuff. And also, obviously, in terms of like the action scene we got at Craster's Keep, there was the blood was very convincing to me. We also had music by Raymond Javadi, which I thought was really good in this. To the point where the two tracks we're going to be listening to are actually from this episode. Like, this episode is very specific with its music.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, before we get into them, though, what did you think of the music overall?
I thought the music was very good, and it was very good for the last two scenes. Or like the last 10 minutes, really.
Yeah, the action music that they played in the Craster's Keep scene was very good. it was very intense.
It was.
But of course, the two tracks we're going to be listening to this episode, the first one is called Dracarys. So that's a very memorable track for me. I've heard that played a lot of times, obviously being, you know, the theme of Daenerys. It's very memorable, that one.
It's very good.
The part where the chorus stops and it goes brrrr, da, is like, it's synonymous with Dragon's Fire, because that's the part that plays before the dragon breathes its fire over Krasn's.
Yeah.
But yeah, what did you think of that track?
I thought that was very good.
It's very fitting for Daenerys, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's one of Raymond's more bombastic themes, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely.
Yes.
A lot of his things are more somber and quite like Winterfell and the Stark theme. This is very like yeah, I agree. It's quite bombastic.
Yes. Right then, so the next one we're going to be listening to is not as bombastic. It is a theme for Theon Greyjoy this season, and it is called I Paid the Iron Price. So how did you feel about that?
I like that.
Mm.
I thought well suited to Theon in this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
He is. Last season, he very much was disrespected and not really liked by anybody around him, even the people he commanded. In this season, it's very much he's in like his darkest place right now. It's quite funny how him and Jamie are like probably at their lowest they've ever been.
Yep.
I think in terms of music, well suited to Theon right now.
Mm-hmm. And they're two of the best characters going. I feel like Jamie and Theon.
Yeah, definitely. I think Theon's had more development overall, but I think Jamie's heading in the right direction, and I'm looking forward to seeing more.
Yeah. I like how in this episode Theon revealed that Dagmar knew that it wasn't Bran and Rickon, and that makes sense because it would make sense how they would believe that they would leave the farm. So obviously Dagmar betrayed him because Dagmar was lying for him.
Yeah, and he was done with his shit at that point.
Yeah. Everybody betray me. I fed up with this world. But yeah, I thought that theme was really good for Theon's point in this story, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he's come a long way.
He really has.
Mm-hmm. What time is it now for?
It's time for the trivia.
The trivia! And now his watch is ended is a phrase commonly used at the end of a eulogy in a funeral for a member of the Night's Watch. Symbolically, it signifies Lord Commander Jean Mormont's death in this episode. The Robb and Catelyn Stark storyline, the Stannis Baratheon and Dragonstone storyline, and the Jon Snow Ygritte Wildling storyline do not appear in this episode. Peter Baelish left his position as Master of Coin last episode, thus he does not appear in this episode either. Bran Stark and Jojenary do briefly appear, but Rickon Stark, Meera, Osha, and Hodor do not. Technically, Catelyn appears because of Bran's dream. Tyrion is only briefly during the early scene with Varys, so obviously this episode focused very heavily on a few of the storylines. Which is good, isn't it? It's good when they do that, when they put the focus on only a few things. Isn't it? It's like in The Wolf and the Lion there were no scenes with Jon Snow or Daenerys. They focused mainly on King's Landing. This episode marks the debut of the new interior set for the Great Sept of Baelor. It also features a new partially CGI exterior of the main entrance. Early in Season 1, in Baelor, Eddard Stark was executed on the steps of the Great Sept of Baelor, but the design for the building hadn't been finalised yet, so much of the building remained off-camera. This episode marks the first time that Cersei Lannister has actually shared a significant scene interacting her with her father Tywin, personally exchanging dialogue with each other. They did briefly share some scenes in Blackwater and Valar Morghulis, but these scenes were in front of the entire court, and they weren't interacting directly. In the preceding episode of Walk of Punishment, they were also in a scene together at the small council meeting, but didn't exchange any dialogue. This episode makes it clear that Tywin's relationship with Cersei is almost as acrimonious as his relationship with Tyrion. And we found out from Tywin that it's not because she's a woman. She's not, because he is prejudiced against Tyrion, obviously because he killed his wife, and also Tyrion is an imp. But he's not prejudiced against Cersei for being a woman, he's prejudiced against her because she's not as smart as she thinks she is. Arya wants Sandor the Hound Clegane to be punished for killing Micah, the butcher's boy on Joffrey's orders, which happened all the way back in the King's Road. I like how small little details like that can have massive consequences later on. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Eddard Stark himself gave Beric Dondarrion the mission of leading men to bring Gregor the Mountain Clegane to justice back in Season 1 episode The Golden Crown. The character of Dondarrion briefly appeared in that episode, but was just played by an extra, as the production team knew Dondarrion wouldn't reappear until Season 3, so they wanted to keep their casting options open until then. I mean, I suppose you could say, like, maybe because he's been mutilated by the mountain, maybe that's why he looks different. I don't know. Daenerys Targaryen is not being poetic when she says Low Valyrian is her mother tongue. She was raised in the Free City since she was an infant, and the people of the Free City speak different dialects of Valyrian. Viserys was a boy when they fled to Westeros, so he already knew the common tongue of Westeros and insisted that Daenerys learn the language of the homeland they needed to take back. But otherwise, most people Daenerys interacted with during her entire life in exile in the Free Cities would have spoken Valyrian. In spite of this, Pentoshi Low Valyrian was not heard in Winter is Coming, probably to make things simpler for the audience, and because linguist David J. Peterson hadn't been given the massive task inventing Valyrian yet, giving that it wouldn't really need to appear until Season 3. Also, I think we needed to get performances in the common tongue to establish the characters. I feel like a lot of those scenes with Viserys in the first episode wouldn't work as well if it wasn't in a language we could understand. If you know what I mean. The confusion over the pronunciation of Tyrell is used to underscore the distance between Cersei and Tywin. Cersei says Tyrell, whereas Tywin says Tyrell. Even Lady Olenna has pronounced the name inconsistently. According to the TV series official pronunciation guide, developed for cast and crew in Season 1, Tyrell is officially pronounced Tyrell. Because that's what Loras calls their name. But the thing is, most people in the show say Tyrell, so it gets a bit confusing.
Yeah.
It's weird because, like, even if Tyrell is the way you're supposed to say it, like, I say Tyrell because that sounds better. It just sounds better to say Tyrell, you know?
I prefer saying Tyrell.
Mm.
I think it sounds better.
Marjorie Tyrell sounds way better than Marjorie Tyrrell.
Oh yeah, I agree. It sounds really weird.
Yeah.
Tyrell was much better.
Makes me think of Cyril from The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. This episode marks the first and so far only time that a house motto has been seen in writing during the TV series. When the Tyrell lady displays the embroidery to Lady Olenna, she included the motto "Growing Strong" underneath the golden rose sigil, which leads Olenna to comment on it. In comparison, the more fierce-sounding words of other houses, the heraldry used in the Seven Kingdoms, doesn't typically include a house motto along with their sigil, i.e. the phrase "Winter is Coming" doesn't appear on Stark banners along with a grey direwolf. As a result, with the exception of the Tyrell lady's embroidery, house words in the TV series are only made known to the audience when the characters verbalize them. According to Alex Graves in the Blu-ray commentary, during the scene between Cersei and Tywin, Lena Headey's hidden microphone fell off and was in the shot. While the other crew members said they couldn't use the footage as a result, Graves was so impressed by Headey's performance in that take that he went into the computer effects department and had them spend the extra time and resources to have the microphone digitally removed. That's quite something. I wish they, hopefully in the Blu-rays that they eventually do for Doctor Who for the 60s, I hope they CGI out the boom mic in the Dalek Invasion of Earth. Like, that's an iconic episode, but my god, the direction on that was a disaster. Like, the whole production behind it was, it's a mess. Like, when you watch the story, it's like watching news footage of a war. It's just really, like, the direction is so poor. Varys was originally intended to give the speech about his past to Tyrion on the eye of the Battle of the Blackwater, as he did in the novels. Due to time constraints, however, it was cut out, so in Season 2's Blackwater, he only considers telling Tyrion to stop and says he'll have to wait for another time. Once the scene was moved to this later episode and they had more time with it, the detail was added in, not present in the novels, that Varys had just acquired in a crate the old sorcerer who castrated him. So, him capturing the sorcerer is actually a show-only thing.
That's interesting. I think that says a lot about his character, I think that scene.
This episode begins and ends with the same form of torture, albeit with greatly different degrees. Jamie is so relieved to be given a drink that he at first doesn't realize it is horse urine, while Theon is released only to be imprisoned again. Both methods of prey hope to their victim and getting their hopes up, only to have them plunge into further despair. Just like, and this isn't in the notes, but I just realized this, Krasnus thought he was getting a dragon, but he got nothing. He only got death.
All of them had their expectations subverted.
So is that the theme of the episode?
Yes. The theme of this episode is Last Jedi.
Oh, okay. And just like Last Jedi, it has a very strong female character, albeit this one has a little bit better build-up. Or should I say a lot better?
And isn't stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It's always smart keeping things to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Not telling people your plan.
Yeah, Varys greets Olenna by telling her that the city of King's Landing is made brighter by her presence. Something he already told Shay in Darkwing's Dark Words. As such, Olenna asks him whether this is usual line when talking to women. Makes sense because he's already said it.
He knows how to... Yeah, he knows how to make a woman smile.
But Olenna's like, and I wonder why you're doing so, considering what could you possibly get from me, considering you've got a gash. Varys tells Olenna that Littlefinger would see this country burn if he could be king of the Ashes. This is perhaps a reference to the novels, and one of the visions Daenerys sees in the House of the Undying is of her father telling someone, let him be king over the charred bones of cooked meat, let him be the king of the Ashes, referring to the wildfire pot. Oh, well, we didn't get to see that, did we?
No, don't think about it.
It is unclear whether Robert actually gave instructions to be buried in Storm's End. Maybe Cersei made that up in order to be far away from the husband she so loathed even after his death.
I'd buy it.
Yeah, because I don't remember Robert giving Cersei any instructions other than, get out of this room, woman. Give me milk of the poppy and let me die.
Yeah.
Anguy chides the Hound about savage raid in the Riverlands, performed by the Mountain as reported in Season 1 episode of Golden Crown. I like how the Brothers Without Banners straight away are prejudiced against him because he's the brother of the Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes sense.
Expect him to be the same.
Mm. And Now His Watch Has Ended was nominated for Primetime Emmy Awards in 2013, Outstanding Sound Editing, Sound Mixing, and all that. Viewership 4.8 overnight. And 5.9 overall.
That's pretty good.
Very good. Again, I think it's the highest so far. I think it's slightly above the last episode.
Slowly rising.
Mm-hmm.
Which a show should do.
Yes.
Shouldn't be declining rapidly. It should be slowly building up.
Yes. Okay then. Give your conclusion and a rating out of 10 for And Now His Watch Has Ended.
I thought it was very solid, with a really, really entertaining, intense last 10 minutes. Some really good scenes. I think Theon's was a particular highlight. I think Varys being a bit more focused on in this episode was really nice to watch. I really enjoy Varys a lot in the scenes. He's great. The actor is great. And yeah, I think all the other scenes were quite fairly solid. So I'm probably... This is definitely the best episode of the season, so I'm probably going to give this a 9 out of 10. Yeah, a 9 out of 10. I think the ending, last 10 minutes, I think, in terms of a spectacle, was very, very satisfying to watch in comparison with everything else. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will add on top of that, the Marjorie scenes with Joffrey and Sansa were brilliant. The obviously, Ramsay Snow's tricking Theon is brilliant. The Craster's Keep incident with Carl Tanner and Rast just losing it, killing Craster and George Mormont. And even though I do have my small criticism of changing some aspects of Daenerys' character, the scene itself is executed very well and is brilliantly, it's iconic for a reason. And the reintroduction of Beric Dondarrion with the Brothers Without Banners was great. And yeah, overall it was a very solid episode. And like you said, the scene with Theon and his little scene talking about Ned Stark was very touching. There was some nice thematic linking. Varys obviously got a lot of focus. Olenna Tyrell is funny, and the scene with Tywin and Cersei is one that I think gets overlooked, but it's a very, very good scene with a lot of subtext in it. So like you, I'm also going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's the strongest of Season 3 so far, and we're moving in a very good direction.
Sure. Yes, for sure.
Well then, with that said, have you got anything else to add on top of that?
I'm glad Daenerys' story is finally, after a season and a half, is starting to get some momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it so nice to see characters progress naturally?
I suppose.
Better than what we got last season with Karth.
Yeah, but the thing is, if Karth was actually written well and preferably adapted the way it was meant to be, this would be better.
Yeah, of course. But it wasn't, so.
Yeah. Yes, but with all that said, next time we're going to be watching episode 5, so we're going to be halfway through season 3. And we're going to be watching Kissed by Fire.
Ooh, someone's going to get burnt.
What could Kissed by Fire entail?
Probably someone's going to get set on fire from the face.
You think so?
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm very much looking forward to it, so we will see you all next time for Kissed by Fire.